Life can be hell when you lack a certain type of knowledge. Not just any knowledge, not textbook psychology knowledge, worldly information. You could study you could take all the courses you want that this world has to offer, and it's barely scratching the surface. And I'm not saying that knowledge is not valuable, because to some degree, there's a lot of truth and facts when you educate yourself on these things, but there's a deeper layer in everything that you learn. Psychology being one of them, even neuroscience, right? And all of those things. I want to welcome you to the channel. This is Yasira, the Spiritual Samurai. And in this video, I'm going to talk about several things. I stumbled across some information, and I've been studying a mental health disorder. Now, again, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed professional psychotherapist or mental health professional, but I do a lot of research. I read, I critically think. I'm also a spiritual person. So I put all of that together, right? And try to figure out and put the pieces together in hopes that it can validate others out there that are suffering from certain situations. Because even I myself have encountered very strange phenomena throughout my life, to where some individuals might actually label me as a schiz. And what the rest of the word is. I don't want to actually say it. But certain things that you go through as a TI, if you explain this to the average person, they're not going to understand what you're talking about. They're going to think you're crazy. That's the first thing they're going to say. And then they're going to tell you need to go get help, right? Because they're not understanding. And again, a lot of information just came to my mind as I was researching and watching videos and I'm actually taking like this really short college course about schiz, right? It's very interesting. I always thought that was a very interesting psychological disorder, right? And again, I say this again, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. I'm not a doctor. So, hey, this is just me expressing my independent thoughts and having kind of like a philosophical discussion. Philosophy meaning the love of wisdom, meaning, hey, we're sharing and exchanging information in hopes that we can help each other understand what is going on. Because there's a lot of information that is not being, shown to the masses, of course, right? And here's the thing. So I could not help but, as I was taking this, course, which, again, I want to understand the information that, clearly, if I'm going to talk about something, I want to know. But I can't help but notice there's a lot of missing pieces in this concept, right? And there's so many different layers I could break down, but the first one I'm going to bring up is, you see, actually, what I'm going to say is the thoughts that came to my mind as I was listening to these video online lectures, right? What came to my mind was how painful it is for a TI to try to get help from a so-called licensed psychologist that has never experienced these things. Can you imagine? I put myself in that position. If I did not have the knowledge that I have right now, and I was in that predicament going through those things, if I would have never awakened to what was going on and what was done to, the TIs, and even some of the experiences I've had in the past, that were very strange. Yeah, I would have went crazy too. And here's the thing. This is my 2 cents on this. And that is, we know what's going on. All right? A lot is being exposed. There are websites you can go to that you already know, official websites you can go to that give you all the information about what's going on with TIs, right? There's also neuromonitoring. There is neuromonitoring also has to do with dream manipulation. So this is what I'm thinking. All right. You could take it how you want, but it is very possible for a person's mind to be rewired through the G stalking. You know what I mean? Brain can be rewired through abuse and trauma. We know that for a fact. We know, like, narcissistic abuse, right? Your abuser keeps messing with your head. You know? And a lot of times it doesn't get physical. That's the thing. That's the thing that makes it. See, they're smart. They're not going to do things that are overtly aggressive. You know what I mean? And just like narcissistic abuse, when it's only mental and emotional, people tend to downplay that. Same thing with gang stalking. Is the same situation with the TIs and what they have to go through. And they don't, a lot of times, some of the times, they don't even know what's going on. But there is a thing called neuromonitoring. There is, all the other concepts. But again, anybody could do their research and really look up what is going on and what is being done to people in this nation. There's a lot of information, like the fact that people still gaslight TIs and all the experiences they've had to go through, the pain of not being heard, the pain of not being understood and being told that you're crazy. This is what came to my mind when I thought, you know what? I'm pretty sure those experiences that the TIs have had, right? Those incidents, those very strange incidences. It's like, I'm pretty sure that it happened enough to where it completely rewired their brain to such a degree that they don't even need to be monitored anymore, because they've already traumatized you so much to the point where now you just went crazy, and then they leave, right? So now your brain is operating off of a loop. You know, it's been conditioned to be to react to certain stimuli in a way that is obviously going to cause the most distress. You know, it's kind of like the opposite of EMDR. You know, EMDR is treatment for people that have PTSD in order to, basically stabilize the person's emotions and also reduce the stress when thinking about traumatic events. And I know because I've went to therapy for EMDR, so I understand how, okay, I don't have panic attacks as much as I did before. I don't remember the last time I've had one, actually. Ever since I did that last year, I haven't had that. But again, that's a form of treatment for your brain, for your nervous system. So this, what the TIs go through, it's the opposite of EMDR. At least that's how I interpret it. It's the opposite of EMDR, because what it's doing is rewiring a healthy brain to react very negatively towards stimuli that appears innocent. And see, this is a very incremental process. It doesn't just happen overnight. You see, they pick certain people to mess with, you see? And it is very, very parallel to narcissistic abuse. If you really think about it, it's very similar, because the handlers, the people behind this, they're operating in the shadows, and they are highly narcissistic and psychopathic themselves. So the abuse that they're doing is remote. They're not in your face, right? But it's still going on. There's technology, man. The amount of technology that's out here is insane. And so, and see, some of these people will say, well, what makes you so special that that would happen? And it's like, that's a gaslighting statement. I'm sorry, because again, no one is saying that we're more special than the other. But the question is, why is this taking place? Because there's clearly information that you can find on these official sites that will literally give you all types of information, all types of stuff. Like, they even got stuff like about the third eye and astral projection, certain documents that you can literally look up for yourself and realize the truth is hidden in plain sight, literally, like right there. But they still have the nerve to mock the victims of this. They mock the TIs that are not awakened to what's really taking place, because they're being told that they're crazy. And in some cases, the cases, they were driven to insanity. That's the thing, is that in the beginning, like they push you. They, first of all, they select a target, and they normally like people that are loners, people that already have trauma, of course, because your brain's already, they want to get to a point where they can just have their way with your brain, and it's, in a way, it's like a sick social experiment that is done remotely. And of course they'll pick a loner because they don't have no one to talk to. And when you don't have no one to talk to, and you already have a lot of trauma from the past, you've gone through so much stuff and you have not healed. And also, how can you heal when these so-called, some of these mental health people, they can't really help you because they don't understand what you're going through? You see, their heart might be in the right place. Don't get me wrong. Some of these mental health counselors and stuff, they might actually have a good heart in some cases. Some of them might not. But the ones that do, they do. But the thing is, they might mean well, right? And in some cases, they're right on certain things. Like, for example, they could say, well, the government's not watching you and stuff like that. Well, here's the thing. Like I said earlier, they do enough damage to you to where they no longer need to keep messing with you. You get what I mean? Like, they keep fucking with your head enough to where, okay, this person is already operating off of autopilot insanity. You see, you already are paranoid. You see, they mess with you enough. Let's say, and sometimes they come in, like I said, they could be in and out of your life. They might mess with you for a certain amount of time, and then they'll kind of just sit back and watch and see how you're reacting. And if you start to exhibit those traits of insanity, then they could say, yeah, this person's crazy. And people will believe it because they don't actually see what's going on. They don't see what's in the air. They don't see the person that's doing the remote viewing. And because so many, again, even so-called mental health people, they, in a way, it comes off like they're gaslighting the victims, because they're saying, well, this person has delusions. That's what they call skits, right? Oh, this person is experiencing delusions. They think that somebody's watching them. They think that, well, how do you know they're not being watched? That's the question I want to ask. Well, how are you so confident? And then they'll say, well, what makes you so special? That's a fucked up thing to say to a victim. That's like telling a victim of domestic violence or any form of abuse, what makes you so special that this person just wanted to make your life a living hell? That's basically what I hear when I hear that, and it pisses me off. And that's what made me want to make this video, because there are so many people living in hell in their mind. They're in prison in their mind. And nobody's there to help them. The so-called highly educated, licensed people that are, supposed to be trained to help people with this type of thing, either they don't know, they're not in the know of this stuff, because they think it's just a conspiracy theory, when clearly, if you do the research, is clearly on official websites illustrating neural monitoring as well as dream manipulation. And I'm going to get into dream manipulation in just a second, because I started reading up on that, and I'm like, dang. So that explains some of the weird stuff that I've seen in my own experience, you know? So I talk about this as someone that has done research, but also I'm not paranoid. I have a sound mind. I have a high IQ, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to say that I know what I'm talking about, and I want to bring relief to the TIs and to anyone that has encountered this weird stuff. You know, because if you've had strange dreams, some people might say it's not so much the technology that can mess with your head, but it even gets into, could it also be spiritual too? Demonic attacks in dreams, when you start to have these weird nightmares, man, these really intense, fucked up nightmares that you didn't even watch no horror movie. Sometimes it just happens, or it could be whatever. It could be your trauma. I know me, I have past traumas that can mess with me, right? So it could literally be anything, right? But let's not get too lost into that. I want to say that what kind of relief can we provide to the TIs? Because I'm gonna say this, it's really messed up how this is set up, because they do enough damage to where, again, they no longer, or they don't really have to do too much to mess with you. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, they already rewired your brain to react with such high distress to things that other people think is not a big deal. You know what I mean? That's how people start to think that you're crazy, because they don't understand that you have been literally classically conditioned to view a certain stimuli and is associated with something that creates high distress. That, to me, if that's not the rewiring of your brain, I don't know what is. Because you can look up neural monitoring, where they basically see somebody's yelling out of their car as I make this video. You see what I'm saying? And that's just a coincidence. I don't think so. But we're going to keep talking. So, neural monitoring, which is the concept of hearing voices in your head. Now, check this out. I'm not saying that, I'm not discrediting what scientists and researchers have said about skits, because there's been 100 years of research. But I do firmly believe that there's a lot of information that we don't know yet. And it's safe to say that it's okay to at least have a discussion about what's going on to people that are suffering from this. Because I'm going to tell you this, these people that see these things that other people don't see, you have to ask yourself, how did they get to that point? How did they get to the point where they're having these so-called delusions? The majority of skits delusions is basically auditory, which is the hearing, right? So how do they with your hearing? Let's not act like they don't have technology to do this. All right? For real. So there's that part. So you're hearing stuff. So that's where people come up with the V2K technology, that kind of thing. And you have that. And man, I remember I got goosebumps when I was listening to some of this stuff, because I'm like, I recall having very weird and it sounds crazy for some people, but hey, if you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. When I was young, very, very young, I remember hearing stuff in my head. I remember I would pray as a kid. I would pray and I started hearing these voices in my head saying crazy stuff, right? Like stuff that I'm just like, I wouldn't even think about. You know what I mean? Like, it's certain things like that, for yourself, this had to come from a different source. And that's what they try to say, that's a symptom of skits, when you think that your own thoughts is not your own. Well, in some cases it's not. You know what I mean? And again, it's weird things like that, right? There's that. And then you see, here's the thing. They don't have to monitor you for the rest of your life if they've already driven you to insanity. You see what I'm saying? But they can definitely hide their footprints through the guise of this person is insane. You see, they do enough to damage your brain to the point where now you can't function and now you have paranoia. You know, it's like they created, what is PTSD? PTSD is when you constantly relive the past trauma. You see, your nervous system is reacting to the past trauma over and over again, right? Well, that's kind of like, of course, with skits is a bit more intense. You know, there's more to it. There's more layers to it. But can you imagine how much trauma a person has to go through? How much, and of course, it also says genetic too. So depending on your genetics, who has it in your family, you're more predisposed to get it. So it's that, but also it's a combination of an environment as well. You know, because two identical twins, one of them can have it, the other one or not. Was it identical or is it the other one? It had to do with twins, but basically if your sibling has it, you're more likely to have it. But in some cases, you may not get what your sibling has. And that's basically based on the information that I came across today, you know. So that's actually a fact. So if given that fact right there, basically, not only is it genetic, but also environmental as well. What makes a person more predisposed for that? You see what I mean? And that's where I get into the fact that they know who to mess with, right? And also they mess with you enough to where now you lose your mind. So now they don't have to do much. They could just sit back and then now they're going to move on to the next victim. Just like a narcissist, you see, it's the same pattern, man, because these people are evil. All right, narcissistic, psychopathic individuals, just evil, right? It's the same type of darkness they're operating off of. And their job is to drive you insane, so that once you're driven insane, I mean, there's nothing that much for them to do. The damage is already done. The world is going to think you're crazy. The world thinks that you're this and that. They're going to label you. It gets to a point where you cannot even take care of yourself. You have lost your faculties. You have lost your peace. A lot of anxiety is inside of you. And then you feel so isolated, lonely, and in some cases, you might end up in an asylum, you know, in the you know, the loony place, right? Because they have utterly destroyed your psyche to such a degree that now you're actually, it's like, let me say this, the things that you've been through, it was something weird about it. You know, it was something from the outside. You cannot explain it, right? But I believe the TIs, absolutely, because some of the stuff that they describe, I've actually, I can understand what they're saying. I try not to make too much videos about this because I know that the TI community and or whatever is like, we tend to get discredited a lot because, again, the label of crazy, right? Well, I could tell you right now, I have a sound mind. I am of a sound mind. I was diagnosed complex PTSD, but I'm on the recovery stage. So I have a lot to talk about. I have a lot of insight, knowledge. I do a lot of research. So no, I ain't crazy. I ain't insane. You're not going to gaslight me. And I'm sick and tired of seeing other TIs suffering because they're constantly being gaslighted. And it sounds like gaslighting when a so-called mental health professional, which is supposed to help you, they keep telling you, that didn't happen. That's not the case. I'm going to tell you this, man. It's a lot of weird things going on in this world. And if you don't see it, if you don't see there's demonic energy in this entire planet, I don't know what to tell you. If anything, you're blind. Like, these people are spiritually blind. I'm telling you. And I know that some of them mean well. They're not all bad people, okay? But they cannot help certain individuals that see things. Like, how can you help somebody that could see and sense things that you can't? You're gonna sit there and say you're delusional, what you're seeing is not real. How do you know that? Maybe it is a delusion, but what if it's not? How can you help them? These people need to be heard, man. The pain comes from not being validated. Not being validated causes a large amount of distress, and a lot of TIs and survivors, they got a lot of that distress from not being heard, people just shutting them down. Oh, you're crazy. Or you're one of those conspiracy theorists. You're one of those, you know, whatever. as if the research ain't out there. The information is out there. That's what drives me crazy. Like, excuse me, no pun intended, but you see, it's like when you really sit back and think about it, it starts to kind of make sense in a way, and I stand firm on what I know and what I'm learning and what my critical thinking skills allows me to see. You know what I mean? So another thing too, again, it gets to a point where once they push the TI to a point where they start to lose their mind. They start to go crazy, right? Which is what the isolation does, of course. Usually, not just the isolation alone, but even just not having no one to talk to about these things, right? There's that no type of validation, no type of. This is why a relationship with God is important. But then they try to tell you that, oh, you're having, they call it religious delusion. First of all, we're not religious, and this ain't no delusion. My belief in the Most High God is not a delusion. Some of these prophetic dreams that some of us have is damn sure not a delusion, because how can you call something a delusion if it comes into fruition? If I have a dream, and I've had in the past, about certain things taking place before it even happened, and then a few days to a few weeks comes, and I see that very same event or symbolism from a dream I had before, that's a prophetic dream. That's not a delusion in that case, but I do understand that a person's mind can be pushed to such a degree where they actually do start to have delusions, you see? And this is a very confusing subject, and I hope that I'm explaining it the best I can in this video. I hope that I am, because I'm not trying to discredit something that scientists and psychologists and all that have uncovered. I just feel like there's a lot of other information that's not really put to the surface like that. You have to really search for this stuff, and then when you talk about it, people want to label you a nut or something like that, not realizing how much of a relief you bring to people that are going through these things. There needs to be more awareness about neural monitoring being one aspect of it, and there's a lot more, but here's the thing. There's so much, like, the act of these things happening to a TI, it can really, like I said, it can cause the same type of abuse, right? It's almost like, how do I explain this? It's kind of like if somebody was to, let's say if somebody was to give you a curse mark, you know what I mean? If somebody was to bite you, and then you start to have this curse mark, kind of like Naruto. If you watch anime, Naruto, how Orochimaru left Sasuke with a curse mark, right? That's just an example. The concept of being bitten and then having this curse mark, and now it takes over your body, right? But it takes over during a certain periods of your life. You see, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it takes over, right? So with that being said, it's almost like they leave you with something. They leave you with something that causes you pain and mental anguish. They leave you with insanity, basically. They mess with you enough to where now your brain is going in circles and replaying the same type of torture that they put in your mind. You see, that explains the voices. Now, V2K, they start, imagine you receive enough abuse from V2K and other things in the air to the point where now they no longer have to emit those things to you. They don't have to put it out in the air. They don't have to do that no more, because they've already done enough damage to where your brain is now repeating that same pattern. You see, the brain is like a program that it's like it's like a computer. You know what I mean? They input that, and then it just keeps going on and on. They know how the brain works. You see, they know what they're doing. All right. So there's that so again, once your brain is repeating that same thing over and over, you're hearing the same type of voice, the same type of quote unquote delusions. And now it becomes a delusion. At first it wasn't, because they instilled that into you. You know, they know what makes you tick. They know your traumas. It's like with the aid of all types of, man, this thing is deep. This thing goes deep, but they know how to mess with your head, basically. And then they can just let you suffer. And now you're by yourself. Now your brain doesn't need the outside stuff to get to you, because now your brain is repeating the same pattern, and then that same torture continues on and on, to where now you're in the process of self-destruction, you know, and you're in the process of, basically, this is what insanity is, right? Insanity is when you're in a loop that never stops, and it's the same thing repeating itself over and over with no solution, no changes, because you don't even know what the hell's going on at this point, because you've lost your mind. And that is basically, once they get to that point, now they can put a label on you, take you to a place, and now you no longer have your freedom or peace. Now, that's all I gotta say for now. On a positive note, I do send prayers to people that are suffering from this. I send prayers to all the TIs. I hope that I hope this video helped, and I hope that you stumble across more actual helpful information that validates your experiences. And hopefully this video kind of adds more light to the situation, to where it's like, when they tell you, hey, these are delusions, it sounds like gaslighting, and it can be. But again, if these so-called mental health people are, they could mean well. In a way, it's like what you're seeing being a delusion, quote unquote, is like it's half right and half wrong, because they don't really, at the end of the day, they don't really know or understand the cause of skits. They still don't get it. They still don't know they don't have all, quote unquote, they say they don't have all the information about skits. They don't know what causes it. It just comes out of nowhere. You mean to tell me that this stuff comes out of nowhere? That somebody's just born, insane? No. There's more to it. Just like a lot of things. There's so much that we don't know yet. But I got a feeling that I'm understanding this a bit more and more. And given that I'm able to digest information in a way, and then explain it in a way that's like easily understood, and also to validate others, because like I said, I have experienced some of these weird things, and I've actually had some, and of course when I opened up about this years ago, I would get labeled a certain label, and of course that's why we don't talk about it. But now that we have people that understand what we're talking about, and they know, and that I've done enough healing to where I have a sound mind, and you could hear it in my voice. You can tell, I'm no. You can't tell me. You can't put that label on me. You just can't. So, again, thank you for listening. I said enough in this video. I hope it helps you. I send you healing energy. To anyone that listens to this, take care of yourself. Pray to God. And, I guess you'll hear me on the next video, hopefully. Thank you, and God bless.